The Longacre Theater on Broadway, currently home to Mike Tyson's one-man show called Undisputed Truth. I actually think about checking it out. Well, this theater is now at the center of a very frightening threat. Now, according to police, over this past weekend, an anonymous person used Twitter to threaten to kill people at the theater. Now, the tweets say, quote, "People are gonna die like Aurora," and that the person is making a hit list. Police taking these threats very seriously, especially, obviously, after the shooting that we even discussed in the last segment at the Colorado movie theater. Now, another shooting at a Sikh temple over this weekend only heightens concerns, and according to an NYPD spokesman, the Intelligence Division learned of the threat Friday evening and requested that Twitter reveal the identity of the account holder. But Twitter said simply no. So the NYPD seeking a subpoena to force Twitter to disclose the identity of the account holder. Now, just recently, you may remember Twitter in the headlines again. They kicked a journalist off of Twitter because he expressed his disapproval of NBC's coverage of the Olympics and included an NBC executive's email address in the tweet, which is against Twitter's terms of service. Twitter later reactivated his account and apologized. Should be noted, Twitter and NBC in a joint agreement here during the deal. Dominic, I'll start with you. We always talk and need to protect sources, and we understand we need to have freedoms here as a press to operate, and that. However, when there's a clear and a credible threat, should Twitter have given up the source?
Of course they should. I don't see where the debate is here. I don't see where the battle is here. You have Americans, you have people in the country that are just going to theaters, as we know with Aurora, and just shooting up theaters. So the NYPD's intelligence division, which is very good at this, we have to take what they say very, very seriously. And I ask you this, Richard, if the daughter of Twitter's CEO was going to be in that theater that night, do you think he or she would still keep that information private, or do you think they would turn it over?
I think you know the answer. It's a good point. Andrew?
Here's where the debate is. The Bradley Manning case, where there was leaked information that was stolen from the Defense Department, and some of that information was dispensed through Twitter. Twitter didn't release the information until a judge ordered them to do so, and with fear of legal repercussion is when they released the information about the gun, and they have similar patterns of doing this. My question is, why was this request just from the NYPD? Why didn't they get a warrant? Why didn't they ask a judge to compel Twitter to release this information?
It's a fine question,
which can be done almost immediately.
But aren't there, we talked about the timing issue, if there's immediate concerns, Twitter did have the discretion to give up the source. They chose not to do so. And I think you touched on the reason why. They were worried about legal exposure. But nonetheless, there seemed to be a clear and credible threat, and I think you got to take into account what's happened in the last 2 weeks to month here to say you can't take these things, you know, lightly.
I certainly do. And with all due respect to law enforcement officers across the country, with whom I have great respect for, they are not the be-all, end-all when it comes to we need this from you. That's a judge.
I had the honor in the Senate chairing the Senate's Homeland Security Committee, and we're actually looking into this, and my office is pretty aggressively, because this is scary stuff. We have to make sure that law enforcement at the highest levels has a direct line, and they're able to do whatever they can to protect the people, not only in this state but beyond. And in the day and age we are, where people are using social media to broadcast their intentions, we've got to make sure that we can instantaneously
How about his point
react.
about due process? Would it have been tough to get an immediate, go immediately to a judge and get a subpoena and then get it right away?
I think it's absolutely ridiculous that we should even have to get to the point where a subpoena needs to be issued when you're talking about seconds being the possible. And I like Dominic's point is right on. If that CEO had a son or a daughter,
I get your point, Andrew, but my always complaint with Twitter and some other social media platforms is they always want it both ways. They put no safeguards in place here to monitor the language there. And only when it's pointed out to them that they got a real problem festering, whether we've talked about cyberbullying or whatever the case may be, do they then throw up and then say, well, you know what, this is freedom of speech, everything needs to go. And as we pointed out, the almighty buck with NBC certainly dictated some of their actions. They want it always both ways. To me, Nobody was holding them accountable for it, but on their platform was a threat. The least I think they could have done is give it up to the NYPD. I think your point may be legitimate, but I think you're giving altruistic reasons to them that they never had.
I certainly am, but Twitter and Facebook and most things on the internet don't work if they're constantly monitored and screened.
Sometimes, though, I think exigent circumstances, and I think what we saw this weekend was that.